I'm not quite even sure what to say in this video, to be honest. There's been like new layers of aloneness that have been unfolding, but also like a deepening of giving everything up and what that actually means. It's not comfortable, and nobody could actually want this. Literally, nobody could actually ever want what this is, because it's giving up letting go of every hope. So it's giving up all hope, giving up everything you ever wanted, everything you ever were, everything you ever wanted to be. And that maybe like I feel like I heard that at one point and it felt like romantic. But then when you're standing face to face with it and there's like an aloneness and there's actually like a deep fundamental departure from the way that human beings operate, there's like this, oh shit, like I can't actually go back anymore. And the way that human beings relate to the world and to one another is dead here. It's like the stories and the dramas and the beliefs and the anxieties and the worries, it dissolved here. And I've been engaging with a handful of people recently, just, meeting people naturally or being introduced to people. And it's strange, really feeling very viscerally in the body how almost like the identity in another, and how transactional that makes every interaction. And it does that, that's part of it. Identity makes engaging with other human beings transactional, because there's always, under the surface, what can me get from this person? Can this person reaffirm who I think I am, feed who I think I am in some way? How can they feed who I think I am? And I realized just like how deeply that has gone here, or how deep that was here, seeing how deep that was. Always wanting something from someone, even if I told myself that I didn't. Even if it wasn't like something overt that I wanted from somebody. I was always looking for validation from everybody in some way. I wanted people to validate who I thought I was, or who I wanted to be, what I wanted my life to look like. And so it's weird interacting with people and just like feeling that, because it's almost like feeling like it's almost like a black, like the identity is almost like this black hole that's always trying to fill itself, but it's never going to be full. So it's like this vacuum that's like trying to suck energy from others into it, or validation into itself, to like feed itself. It's weird. And it's strange to interact with, actually. It's pretty strange to interact with it. And the aloneness of that is kind of shocking, actually, because it's a departure from everything. It's giving up hope of connection, of partnership, of being understood, of all of it, being loved, being seen. Because identity can't see beyond itself. It can never see beyond itself. And like every human being just like craves so deeply, like what's underneath the identity, like the true nature craves to be seen. But identity is just like this wall, this veil that is this impenetrable force field. And so as long as that's intact, the hungry ghost will forever just, the vortex will forever just be like sucking things into it, trying to satisfy itself. And it will never be satisfied. So there's been like a deeper coming into a deeper layer of aloneness and what that means. And actually like the cross, it's like bearing a cross in a way. Not in like a specialness kind of thing. It's almost just like, at least what it is right now, it's like, man, why did I do this? Why did I thought that I wanted something because, even like what I heard of awakening was filtered through the lens of identity. And it always wants something, so it warped all of that stuff into some idea that it was going to get something out of it. But that's not the way that this works. It's not the way it fucking works. You get nothing. Nothing is gotten out of this. Nothing is gotten from awakening. It's giving everything up. It's dying into solitude, aloneness, life as it is, whether it matches your preferences or not. And I look at my life and what was required in my life for that to happen. And it's been moving to West Virginia and living alone in the woods. Alone. Having a house. Alone. Being in a place where there's not a sense of what I would have at one point called community, or people that quote unquote get me. It's alone, 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 alone. And I guess that for me, that was necessary. It was necessary here. The external solitude, deep solitude, quiet, nowhere to run, literally nowhere to hide from myself, from the illusion, nowhere to hide anymore. Everything exposed. It's like being flipped inside out. Being flipped inside out for the world to see. Just imagine how uncomfortable that would be. Like everything on the inside, the thoughts, all of it, your deepest, darkest shame being brought into the sunlight, not being able to hide it from anybody. The division goes away. There is no inside and outside anymore. There is no should have, could have, what if, I wish I had. There's no regret, nothing. That all dissolves when what's on the inside comes outside. Identity is set up to be validated. It wants to uphold itself however it can. And it hides our biggest points of unconsciousness hide in plain sight, which is pretty strange. They hide from us in plain sight. And like, I'm not saying that all of the things here have been seen through. I'm sure they haven't. But it's this strange thing that, like, no practice, it's almost like the practices were just, I don't know, something to keep busy. Like busy work at school. Like all the practices. And it's like the real life shit, that's where the dissolution has really occurred. Like the grief, feeling the grief of my life falling apart, of my relationship falling apart, of what I wanted falling apart, and being alone, being completely alone. And I don't just mean like a little alone. It's like getting okay with being alone in the universe for infinity. Forever. It's fucking uncomfortable. And I can't say that that has like completely settled here, but it's in the works. And it's very uncomfortable. There's been like deep grief. Having to let go of my oldest hope of being loved, being accepted, being seen. And that's not to say that those things will never happen, but it's giving up the hope of it ever happening. Which is the last thing that anybody wants, is to be completely alone, is to be that alone. As Adyashanti says, being so far out there, feeling so far out there that nobody can get to you or touch you. It's like every person's worst nightmare, literally. It's death. It's what we all run from, what we all avoid. Because in complete aloneness, like if there's nothing else to reference, what you think you are ceases to exist. It dies. What you think you are. What you believe yourself to be. This isn't glamorous. Nobody else can give it to you. The practices, I mean, they're not necessarily a distraction, but in large part here, it was a distraction, watching videos. If you're watching this video, it might be, maybe there's a key here, it might be a distraction. Watching videos, reading books, entertainment, distraction, distracting from real inquiry. There was some like real deep inquiry that came up recently. There's different ways to inquire. And there was a pointing that I came across that was, like, find the question that like really drives your whole life. And here, like, you've maybe heard of the questions like self-inquiry, who am I? That has been, gone into in ways here, but there was just, that never quite spoke to me, I think probably for different sets of conditioning. The question that really calls is going to be different. And what I realized, like, the question that really just draws this thing towards it, towards the unknown, towards destruction, is what is love? And at first it was what is love? There's all sorts of ideas about that and projections about what that meant, about a relationship, about being lovable. But those are all just concepts and ideas and beliefs. The question, what is truth? It's just, it would be the same question. What is silence? They're all really the same question. But it's like, what draws you? And what is love here, at least? I think love is such a tricky word because it's like there's so much wrapped up in it, but it's like really letting that question drop, settle in. And it's not a question that will ever be answered. The mind will never be able to answer it. And I got to a point where the mind has like given up. I don't know. Can you really ever say what love is? You could say love is a child, holding my partner, but is that really it? Maybe it's a facet of it. Maybe it's a way to represent an aspect of it, but is that it really? Do you know? Do you know actually what unconditional love is? What love? Do you really know what it is? If you did, would you be searching for anything? Would you be searching for fulfillment? Would you be searching for the end of your suffering? For liberation? If you really knew through and through? I wouldn't have. That's driven my whole life, that question, without even realizing it. I didn't even know it. And I searched everywhere. I searched all these cul-de-sacs, and there was different variations of it. What is love from a family member, from a parent, from a partner? What is love of self? And I just always had to come back to, I don't know. I don't actually know. I still don't know what love is. And having to admit that was hard. And the mind can say, oh, but actually it's here all the time. But do you know? Not here, not do you know. Is it a lived experience, moment to moment to moment to moment to moment? Can you get below the mind thinking that it knows the answer? The body thinking that it knows the answer? An emotion. Is love really an emotion? Is it something that comes and goes? You can say, Like, does love go away when there's anger present? Is the love less? Does it diminish? So is it actually an emotion? Emotions come and go. So do you really know what love is? Because love was present before your children were born, before you met your partner. So what is it? Do you really know? Are you sure? Eventually, I realized this recently, or maybe it just formulated itself, that inquiry, the questions drop. And I've heard Adyashanti talk about this, but I really understood it because it starts in the mind, and the mind kind of goes at the question and has all these concepts and ideas of trying to answer the question or thinking that it knows. Like, yeah, I know what love is. I know what the truth is. I know who I am. And then eventually it has to admit that it doesn't know. And then it drops. Question drops down into here. And then the heart goes at it. Does the heart really know what love is? Does it know what the truth is? Does the body know? Can love be, or the truth, or what you are, be captured in a thought, in an emotion, in a sensation? Do any of those things really define who you are? What the truth is, what love is, what silence is? So find your question, whatever it is. It may be different than mine. That's just what I realized, is that question was driving my whole life. And I finally got to a point where I gave up. Said, I don't know. I thought I knew. I used to think that I knew. I don't actually know. The mind could never know. And inquiry, this type of inquiry is the most alone that one could ever be. Because nothing outside of you can ever answer those questions. Nothing in the mind can ever answer those questions. Emotion can never answer those questions. The body sensations can never answer those questions. Identity can never answer those questions. Identity has to be peeled away, layer by layer, unceremoniously, sometimes painstakingly. There's really nothing to say, honestly. I realized the last handful of videos were, or a lot of the videos of almost like there was still a subtle layer of wanting validation. It's like I can't say 100% dried up, but it's getting there, and it's almost like it makes it so that there's nothing to say. What could possibly be said? Because nobody actually wants this. Nobody could want this. It's the worst news for someone, for an identity. I see why the silence is one of the biggest parts of a transmission. So what can be said? Anything that can be said isn't it. Can point, but it's not it. It's not the truth. It's not silence. It's not love. Even love isn't love. Even truth isn't truth. Even silence isn't silence. Like, those are just words. Those are just concepts. Those are things that the mind can grasp hold of, and what this actually is completely beyond that. Can't be grasped or held or inspected or investigated. Like, the investigation is digging through everything that isn't it. It's hard. That's it.